Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bill Namen's Bogus Hangout. I'm going to have our guest introduce himself. I'm going to start with Zara because she gets a kick out of it. Zara?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. And my name is Zara Altair, and I write for the web.
And Doc, will you introduce yourself?
And I'm Doc Sheldon of Intrinsic Value SEO and Deep SEO Con.
And Terry, will you
Terry
introduce
Van
yourself?
Horn, Toronto, Ontario. That's about it.
And I'm Bill Slosky, weight unknown, location unknown. I'm from SEO by the Sea, and I'm the director of SEO research for Go Fish Digital. So some interesting news stories that you prepared for us, Terry.
Yep.
So, did Google used to love AMP? All the top stories used to be AMP stories. Now it's only a percentage.
Yep, and that's the only reason people converted to AMP was so they could get into top stories.
So AMP is short for accelerated mobile pages.
Yeah.
At least I came across a Apple patent they called accelerated mobile pages AMP pages. So we're going to use it with Safari. And it looks like Google came up with their own AMP pages. And a little lightning signal icon disappeared in web results and so on.
Yeah. They took those out a while back. What I don't get is why everyone thinks the only reason that people turn their sites into AMP was to get into top stories.
I remember
think a lot of people seem to have just fallen for the line that was a surefire way to have a fast page, which everybody seemed to think was a ranking factor.
Right. But do you think the New York Times is going to convert to AMP for that reason?
we were working with Google, putting together some posts for Bill Namen's Bogus Hangout in the early days. And we did one on duplicate content, no duplicate content penalty. But the Google people were trying to convince us to run Hangouts about AMP because they wanted to promote AMP. This was like 5 years ago.
Right. I remember they were very, very aggressive about promoting
They
it.
wouldn't have liked hearing what I had to say about it.
Yeah.
They were very AMP heavy.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the thoughts behind it, right? And what they did to try and make it faster and safer.
It's a
right?
simplification of HTML and JavaScript, right?
Actually, it does. You can't have third-party JavaScript on.
Right, but it's a simplified version of things.
Yeah, everything's
HTML.
dumbed down, and the CSS you're restricted. Like I'm doing some work now, right?
Yeah.
And I realized I took the CSS that was originally in a theme, and I literally removed 3/4 of what was in it because it was all repeated in either WordPress or Bootstrap. So in other words, most of the CSS isn't even needed. And it's a known fact, CSS runs better inline, faster inline. And it makes it easier for the browser to map out the page.
Oh yeah,
So
it helps keep the COS
There's a
down.
lot of good reasons for using AMP beyond just being in top stories. And that's what a big enterprise site is going to look at more than whether or not Google is going to put them in top stories. You know why? Because likely they're going to end up there at some point anyhow.
Well,
A good mobile platform, and you can afford the, loss of hair and expensive programming, it's probably a pretty good platform. Me, I just couldn't take the frustration of
we were working
trying
with
to
a
make
couple.
something look the way I thought it should. And so I just said, you know what? I'm just going to fix WordPress and move on.
We were working with a couple of large websites that were salivating over the thought of AMP, of top stories. They really wanted to be in them badly.
Well, I think they're going to be a pretty good source of traffic, hence all the SEOs thinking the only reason, look, you know how easy it is to change your site to AMP if you're already running WordPress? It's as simple as going to the repository and downloading the plugin. It's that simple.
You know how easy it is to not update the AMP, though?
I did it. It was quite easy. It was pretty simple.
I've been struggling with myself over whether or not I should install the plugin.
I did with Generate Press. The JavaScript it removed, Bill, was doing nothing. Like, that's what you got to remember. A lot of the stuff that AMP takes out, you don't freaking need anyhow.
Well, Generate Press doesn't have a whole lot of bloated stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I was building 11K size pages in the 90s. And now the page is like 300K or less. It's small.
Yeah.
Well, the footprint for Generate Press is smaller than most.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Google has SEO best practices for deal pages.
I thought they were pretty.
We need to define a deal page. A deal page is like a Black Friday page or a Cyber Monday page.
Yeah, or some places have specials on all the time.
Yeah, they have, or like monthly specials.
Oh yeah, I every e-commerce store that I've been on ends up having the specials. You know why? Because you put that in the top navigation, and that's one of the first places people will go is to go and see if the specials are what they want.
These people live in places like San Diego that have Taco Tuesdays. Say, we should have deal pages.
Same thing. It's, that's what you look for on the website. Even better is in an e-commerce store, I usually, on the front page, would have the brands that are on special. So they would know kind of what was there, too.
Mm-hmm. In these days of giant stores closing down forever, like a Fry's, you want to keep track of these. Yeah, places that have deal pages.
Yeah. They've worked well for me in the past. Like have a stationary page that is optimized, and then you just add products to it.
Mm-hmm. So have any of you figured out what those 3 dots stand for in search results after a site name? So Google is supposed to be adding more information about pages to those when you click the pop-up that comes up with those. When you click on one of those,
as to why they ranked it,
it tells you why they're ranking sites. It's not showing whys of ranking for me yet.
Not for me down here, are you?
I don't think they'll ever tell you this site's ranking because of this. They'll tell you the factors, links are there, links count, and
it's telling
having
you
the words on the page help a lot.
This is a site that's more than 10 years old. It's been ranking for this shit for the whole 10 years.
Yeah.
It's not telling me any more than that.
Oh, if you're thinking they're going to tell you how to SEO that page, sorry,
Well,
InfoSeek went out of business a long time ago.
Whoever's publishing that and wrote it makes it sound like they're going to tell you something that they're not telling you.
Well, they wanted to see how SEOs would jump all over it, probably. Just to screw with us, another Gary Ilias type deal.
Uh-huh.
Here, let's screw with them a little bit. We'll give them all this information, and it actually, if you don't know it, you got a good future.
So what is SEO treating soft 404 pages as now? Didn't Gary write that story?
Yeah, I was looking at that. That's kind of interesting. What they had was a classifier for soft 404s, and it was causing some pages to get de-indexed. So they shut it off.
So
Okay,
you're
Go ahead.
you're either out of something or it's not getting indexed, so nobody asks for it.
Didn't say how it happened. Just said that a classifier was seeing something and it was saying, you know what, this should be de-indexed.
So they're not de-indexing now, but they are still showing soft 404s. Is that correct?
Oh, they'll always show soft 404s. They had something that was classifying the 404s and it was causing this de-indexing bug. So they shut that classifier off.
It's like showing the status code of 404.
So more no news.
Well, actually, a soft 404 is actually where the response code is a 200 on a 404 page.
Right. And people show a web page that shows 404, even though it's not showing the status, not returning the status code of 404.
Right. The two don't match up. And that's usually configuration of the server, or it's an old IIS server, which never did that right. You had to go to your 404 page and actually embed the 404 response code. And by the way, Microsoft said that's the way it's supposed to be done.
Your search engine is broke.
I guess their logic was, well, the 404 page itself is responding, so it's 200. How's that for logic? Just like when they do redirects, they're always 302s. It was harder to do a 301 than a 302.
You're going to change that in a year or two, right?
I think they already have. They're doing two versions now. Returns a 307 currently, I believe. Last time I checked IIS.
Which is an HSTS response.
What is a 307?
307 is a permanent redirect using hyper HTTP2.
Okay.
Why they change it, I don't know.
Yeah,
just to confuse people.
I think that's got something to do with it.
Or to differentiate the two, but you can tell that just by looking at, doing a head check on a page of what version of HTTP they're using. It's not like it's a state secret.
Terry, do you ever look at question hub pages in Google?
I haven't, but when I looked at it this morning,
Yeah.
I thought if I was actually writing content now, this would be one of the places that I would start my, I hate to call it keyword research anymore. I like to call it topic research because I
that's
don't
what
think
I do. I call it topic
really-
research. So
really,
after I read that, I went there and looked, and you have to configure everything, and but what I thought was interesting from a writer's standpoint is that you have to wait for Google to tell you, well, maybe yes and maybe no. And I've been using ink lately for composing. And one of the things that ink does is show comparable, usually articles. It's AI, so it makes mistakes, but comparable articles on whatever your topic is, and it shows them right away. There's no waiting around while Google says, well, maybe yes and maybe no. So if you're writing one piece of content a month, I think it might be helpful. But if you're writing multiple pieces of content on a regular basis and waiting for Google to tell you maybe yes and maybe no, I'm not sure how helpful it is.
Yeah, but that's not really what that tool does. That tool tells you nobody is writing on this topic and this topic needs to be covered. That's what I found very useful because I believe the uniqueness of content is going to become very, very important.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, that I agree, because one of the things I put in as my test this morning, there was nothing. They hadn't found anything on instant search, and
that's what you should be writing on. Just
be
like when you do a content audit, you're looking for what should be there that isn't.
That isn't right.
So
you're filling a need.
It's really helpful.
Google's Matt Cutts and their chief economic officer, Hal Varian, came out with the patent about 10 years ago that said some topics are sparse. And we can identify when topics don't have many questions or answers and need more content written about them. And we can share that information. And they never provided a way of sharing that information.
Now they
This
have.
question hub seems like it does that.
Yeah. I think people who thought it was just going to spit out all the questions that they should have on a page got a rude awakening.
I really like that because one, I'm going to go back to using ink for a minute. One of the things that happens in ink is it says this, and this, are things that need to be covered under this topic. But what if you have an original idea and it's not there, and you're bringing new information to the topic? That's where that kind of system, which scours the web universe.
Well, you do a search in Google. If you get crappy answers, you come up with your own.
Yeah, and then you come up with your own. Yeah, and so here's one of the things that I've been thinking about since I've been using ink for like 3 weeks, testing it out, and there's a lot of things I like about it. But one of the things is that then it gives your content an SEO score, unquote.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're coming up with new information, it's not scoring that because it's not finding anything else
to compare it to.
Right.
But how worthwhile is that score to look at anyway, though?
What is the name of this tool again?
I'm sorry, Doc. What did you say?
Okay, how while is that score to look at anyway, though, Sarah? I mean, I wouldn't wait
The
that
score,
long.
okay, so the score is based on the writing and the content, right? It's also based on, whether you have images that come in, and I don't put the images in my ink. I just use it for writing. And it's also based on whether you have a meta title or a meta description. So if you add that in the ink function, if you add your meta title and your metadata, your SEO score automatically goes up. So it's like you can use it with a grain of salt. It is helpful.
Not a grain, a salt lick. You know those big things in the farmer's field? That's what you should be using. Not a grain, a salt lick.
It's really interesting. One of the reasons I started experimenting with it was, I think I mentioned this before in another session, that one of the people that I'm working is using an SEO evaluator for all the articles, and it's basically based on keyword stuffing, and I'm just like, you should have this word 7 times in your article, and mentioned it 0, and I'm like, what? This is a ridiculous thing. And so I wrote to them and I said, and they said, well, it helps guide the people. Yes, I have used Answer the Public. I like Answer the Public. They said it helps guide the people who aren't familiar with SEO. But my concern is that, so here's 19 other writers, who are being told this is their guide to writing content that is SEO friendly, and I'm like, keyword stuffing is not SEO friendly. It's just the opposite,
Yeah, but obviously they don't know that, and you'll never tell them differently.
No, I know.
They probably think they know it all.
Oh, because
if somebody's telling you I use keyword density to optimize my pages, say it's wonderful. Good job.
You would have worked real well in the late 90s. That worked like a charm.
Anyway, I don't know. It's interesting. Yes, I do. Bill, your question, Answer the Public. I like Answer the Public. I especially like it when I'm writing about topics of which I have minimal knowledge, and I have to get myself up to speed in order to write something. And the questions that people search for give me an indication of what is on people's minds. And so just like putting ranking aside, if you're writing an article that is going to be answering questions for people's queries on the web, I think Answer the Public is a really good source.
So one of the first tools that I got into using in SEO when I first started was a notepad. And I gave it to the person who answered the phone for web queries, for customer service, for sales questions. And he would write down the questions people asked. And we'd look at the questions once a week and figure out what the answers were and decide whether or not we wanted to put them on the website.
All right.
And it seemed like a good way of developing new content.
Yeah,
it is a good way. I think for businesses, it's one of the best ways, because customers who are using your product or service, whatever it is, who come up with questions and actually write to you with their questions. Remember, there's lots of people who have questions who never tell you what their questions are. They just get stuck, So those questions that come into your business are highly indicative of the places where you need to explain more.
So he loved having the phone number on the website because people would call and he could sit and talk to them for hours. And They would ask questions. He would write them down. He would answer them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's customer service and sales. If you're building a website and deciding upon content, they're two of your best, resources for what content you should be writing, because that also gives them the ability to say, hey, look, go to our website, go to this page, follow these links, and everything you need is right there. That improves the customer care and gives you a chance to rank for it, and all kinds of advantages.
Totally.
It's a way of taking that frequently asked question material and bringing it to life, because you're identifying why people are interested, why people keep on asking for those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's first level information.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think there's a reason behind Google adding a question area to the
Question Hub.
Google My Business.
Oh, to Google
There's
My.
a place on that where you can ask the business questions. I think that's another reason that they added it there, so they can gather this information from there.
They added a tool to their POS equipment, so Google can identify some of the things that businesses are selling now that they don't necessarily have in an inventory. But it can identify those things and put information about those up on a company's website. I have some local gas stations that carry things like candy bars and stuff like that. And the stores sell those things, and sell a lot of them sometimes. And the point of sale can identify what they're selling, and it can inform the website. So people can know, hey, I can get snacks from this place down the corner. They sell these things. It's a shame that websites don't usually carry that type of stuff, but sometimes they don't.
Well, would that be on the Google My Business as well as the website, or is Google saying you need to put this on your website, or this is a good idea for your website?
I haven't worked with the device, so I'm not sure where it shows.
Okay. But it does make sense. While you're here, grab an X.
X marks the spot. Yeah.
Automated upsell.
I got candy and condoms.
Have a Snickers to get your energy up, and as long as you're awake,
I mean, there are lots of gas stations that have little convenience stores connected to them that don't advertise anything and don't tell you anything about the stores. So unless you stop and actually go inside the stores and look around, you'll never know.
That's true.
That's where chains like that should have multiple listings, GMBs, so people can differentiate between stores.
I think a lot of times people don't want to do the work of actually itemizing what they're selling. They just want to have the vendors drop it off to the store on the shelves and do inventory on it and restock it. I get disappointed going to drugstores and going to grocery stores and asking people who are stocking shelves about help finding something else. And you say, I don't work here. I'm just restocking the shelves. Say, yeah, because I usually go to grocery stores and restock shelves still.
Though a lot of the vendors, that's part of the deal. They stock the shelves.
All right.
You see that with pop products or Coke products or soda pop.
But they don't. But they don't. They don't work there. they don't work there, so they can't
No, they
answer
don't work
questions
there.
about the
They
rest of the
work-
store.
Right. All they know is what they're restocking. They know where
Right.
that is, and that's it.
I went to a pet store and tried to buy dog food and asked somebody for help, and she was from a different brand, so she didn't know.
Oh, wow. Well, that's not good.
Not good for the pet store.
Fido was hungry.
Wow. You don't have a dog, Bill. Why were you looking for dog food?
I have a friend with a dog who needed
Oh,
dog food.
So you're picking some up on your way there.
Mm-hmm. It's a shame.
Usually the people who are restocking, at least in the grocery stores, usually the people who are restocking have some kind of thing that identifies their company. You know,
Right, but they wear different uniforms than the people who work at the grocery store.
correct.
So
Yeah.
they tell you look for the people in blue.
Yeah.
We
My
wear black.
brother-in-law-
We're not them.
My brother-in-law.
There's the guy hiding in the back.
My brother-in-law works for a large bread distributor that they stock everything from the Costco's on down to the 7-Elevens, and that's the way they do it. He'll drive up there. He knows rough. First of all, he'll go in and check the shelf, and he knows he's got a tray there that'll hold, let's say, 72 loaves of this brand of bread. So he'll go out to his truck after pulling the ones that are expiring and bring enough in to fill out that shelf. The manager might do a walkthrough later in the afternoon to see what his bread line looks like, but the store employees never touch that stuff. You know, Libby's canned goods and bread, and with the exception of meat and produce, the grocery stores rarely touch their product.
Except they have planispheres. They know where things are supposed to go, and they're charging money for them.
Sure. But I mean, as far as actually stocking product, and it's all done electronically by the vendor when he comes in and stocks, and he transmits, okay, I took 32 and I left you 56, therefore you had 24 consumed. And that goes right into their system.
And that's why I can never find stuff in the grocery store. Because I can only find people restocking shelves. Nobody knows where something belongs.
Yeah.
But that's only true in pet stores and convenience shops and grocery stores. Of course, those are the only stores I shop at.
Well, I'm sure you could get help if you went to Victoria's Secret, but you'd be the funniest looking guy on your block, though. I mean,
Well, the produce in the markets, the produce comes, and then the people that work in the produce department are the ones who hopefully, and theoretically, pull the old saggy wilted produce and put out the new produce from their refrigeration section.
yeah, produce and meat is normally run by your in-house people.
Yeah.
As far as stocking and unstocking, but everything else is generally, maybe not in a little, mom and pop shop. They're just going to get boxes dropped off. But I mean, in a chain store, everything but meat and produce, even a dairy, it's all done by delivery folks.
Yeah, it is. The dairy is done by delivery, and it's the same thing that people.
They were the first to do it.
So, because the dairy includes not just milk, but all the dairy products.
Yeah, butter, sour cream, yogurt, all that crap.
Yeah.
Well, when I was a chef, I appreciated that they were doing that because it was about 15 stacks up to the ceiling for the science center when I was working there. Spend the first hour putting the milk away, for Christ's sake. A lot of places, they just left it on the back door.
Yeah. When I was cooking, when I moved to Southern California, there, people aren't quite so food aware, and I would have to go to the people, say, in the produce department and tell them I'm cooking professionally, in front of other people. I can't use those moldy strawberries or whatever it is they had out on the shelves. And then they would go, oh, well, we have some fresh ones in the back. And they would go get them for me.
So sell the bad ones first.
Sell the bad ones first, but do people actually buy them? I guess they do, or they would pay more attention.
I worked with somebody who used to go to local restaurants and replace or get them new produce. And we would go to the Philadelphia produce market and pick the stuff up. They had lots of walk-in refrigerators that were filled with things. And that was a lot of fun. They also have a excellent cafeteria there. They get all their meats and cheeses from the Packers market down the street. So it was like the best place to get corned beef sandwiches.
Now you're making me hungry.
Now I am hungry. It's lunchtime.
I was talking with my daughter the other day. There's a place there's two of them. They're the same ownership now. They used to be distinct, but there's Glen Ellen Village Market and Sonoma Market.
Yeah.
And they had they each had a deli section, as it were. And when I left, which was a few years ago now, in 2004, when you got a turkey sandwich, it was real turkey. I mean, they took the turkey off the breast and put pieces of turkey meat. Yeah. That
mock turkey is the word. They should take whoever invented that and line them up. That stuff is not edible. If someone tried to serve me that, I'd freak out. Like, you got to tell me. Sorry, that's not turkey. That's white and kind of tastes like turkey.
They're
bacon.
They're updating the strip mall near me, and they're putting in a new butcher shop, which sounds really good. They have 2 or 3 of them in the area in San Diego. It's supposed to be pretty nice.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
What's the name of it?
There used to be I've forgotten the name of it. It was the German butcher market just north.
Tip Top Meats.
Tip Top, yeah.
Yeah, I've been there.
Tip Top was one of the places, I can't remember what I was looking for, but they didn't have it, and I could order a box if I needed it. And the box was like $400 because you got the huge thing, all these cuts.
So
I broke down in tears and I said, people just don't cook here in Southern California. And he said, you're right, they don't.
They've got things like Scrapple, which you can't get anywhere else.
Scrapple? No.
Right. Yeah, Tip Top was really great. They would also order for you some things, except the things that were so rare you needed to buy the whole box.
Yeah, I've bought South African deli meals. I've gotten other things from other places. They carry a lot of stuff.
They do. They have some interesting condiments and stuff too.
Mm-hmm. And they have Belgian chocolate.
Yes.
Mm.
So anyway, can I go back to the question hub for a minute, Terry?
Sure.
once you hook up your website, since I only did this morning, once you hook up your website and you've picked your areas of interest, as it were, then Google's going to tell you, nope, there's nothing there. So this is probably a good, it doesn't say this, but it just brings you back that there isn't much out there about that particular topic.
I didn't look that deeply at the tool, but that sounds like on one of the first keyword tools that Google developed, you could actually tell it, this is my website, what keywords should be going on what pages. Do you remember that, Bill?
Yeah.
It would tell you what pages should be optimized for, the keywords.
So
It was no good. So I gotta think that this will be the same.
that this will be the same. Well, what I found interesting in the short, brief time I was there was I put in one keyword phrase topic and it came back with some pretty funky articles. and then I put in another keyword phrase topic and it said something like, well, we're not finding anything right now, check back and we'll see if we'll find anything. And that's where I left it this morning when I
see what they do is they take that keyword now, and it's probably now they're searching for stuff on that to add to their repository, right, Bill? Would that be a good or bad assumption?
They like to work. They like to crowdsource information. If they've got 10 million viewers searching a day, they'll collect query log information from those people every day to find new questions, find new templates, find canonical versions of queries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes sense to have a threshold. We've seen 4 requests today on this keyword.
Yeah.
We should have this in our.
This is the format we should have answers to.
Yeah.
For
this is what we need answers to.
This is how people ask about this topic.
Right.
These are types of questions. This is what we should answer. We need featured snippets more.
Okay, well, I like that because one of the things that excuse me, Answer the Public does is that it does tell you the type of questions that people use.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
In Links has similar tools that'll give you questions
yes,
and
does.
Related words. It does that pretty good. That was one of the things that I was impressed. I didn't really care that it tried to link on pages like, there's some things that I just don't want algorithms to be doing on a website.
Right. If
making links is one of them.
If I'm going to figure out links, I'm going to figure out links. I'm going to be responsible for them.
Right.
Not some tool I use.
Right.
Yeah. Because I thought it kind of didn't always pick the most appropriate places. It was like sometimes a word, right, can be an exact match to what they're looking for, but it's not really in the context that it should be in.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll get a set of search results and I'll look at it and I'll say, no, I never linked to any of these people.
And never will.
Yeah.
Well, I think that because you guys are technical, it's more precise. But my feeling about artificial intelligence giving you possibilities is that's exactly what they are. They are possibilities, and then it's up to you to decide if this is a possibility that you really want to use.
I have a friend who his company got sold 3 months ago for $122 million. They made an artificial intelligence tool. It would visit a page, you point out to them, and find similar pages to it. It was very effective. And people liked it enough to pay them lots of money for it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Doc and Sarah a couple of questions.
I am
See
not.
if they agree with some theories that I've had. After I read your author's article,
Yeah.
I was very intrigued by unique content.
Yeah.
And one of the things you said earlier, Zara, set off something in my head, which I thought about, is when I didn't really know a topic, I just go and find similar articles, take the same stuff, reword it, and, that would do it. But I found that stuff didn't always rank that well.
Yeah,
right? And I'm starting to wonder if you got to have that uniqueness, because a couple of times I went back and made changes to articles, right? That did make them. I thought, oh, I could have added this, which wasn't in the topic, and the pages rose a little bit. So I think this is not just something that's entirely new. I think it's been there all the time, and I think Google with their new BERT and all that stuff, it's much easier to analyze content at that level.
At that level, right? And one of the important things, and this is something Bill has mentioned many times, is that the relevance of the words that are inside that content makes a difference, and it helps the search engine understand what the whole big picture of that content is. That's why that keyword stuffing things, that's why they impede the quality of the content. If something is telling someone, most are, because this is what it's saying. It's saying most articles that talk about X mention X 7 times in the piece of content. You have mentioned X 0 times, so you need to mention it 7 times in order to compete.
Yeah, well, it's already in 100 other articles. Why do I need it?
Yeah, why do you
Where's
need
the value at?
Exactly.
There's at least one paper from Google on FrameNet and word embeddings, word vectors. But FrameNet is from Berkeley. It's a way of understanding a jargon from a particular industry. Like if you're a chef, you talk about certain things like steels or knives, or
right, exactly.
If you're I read an article by a guy about criminal justice, and he talks about people getting incarcerated. At the very end of the article, he mentions that people are going to get incarcerated in jail. I'm thinking, this guy's never worked in a court. He's never worked for a prison. Because if you're sentenced to something, you go to prison. If you're being held before you've been sentenced, you're in jail. You don't get incarcerated in jail. You get held
until
in jail.
You're sentenced.
Right. So he was just it was a very well written article until I got to the word jail at the end of the article. Then I said, this guy doesn't know shit. He's got no idea what he's talking about.
He showed his ignorance on the topic at the end by doing that.
Yeah.
Now, Terry, one thing a tactic that we started using many years ago that used to work and no longer is as effective was if it was a topic that we really weren't terribly familiar with, rather than going and finding another article that seemed to be an in-depth article, we try to find 4 or 5. And let's say it's kind of like if you got a situation where you got these people each posting the 5 best plugins for this, the 10 best plugins for that. You go and you pull them all together and you publish your 17 best plugins, okay?
Right.
But you avoid the repetition, and that used to be effective for search engines.
Doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't work anymore, but it can be more effective for users.
Yeah.
It's
who that does work though for, Doc, I bet, If you find the guy who wrote the first post on that, I'm betting he's the one who's ranking.
Quite often, you're probably right. Yeah. But that's what we'll do. We'll still do that when we're trying to get more information in front of the reader. We'll go find 4 or 5 resources and glean from them all something of interest. And then, of course, we write it in our own words. We're not just changing the order of the paragraphs crap. We rewrite it with knowledge. But it doesn't work.
But there's another thing that comes up, which is what Bill just mentioned about fact checking. It's real easy to go and fact check the difference between jail and prison.
Incarceration, even that, there's a difference.
Okay, yeah. So, this morning I was researching something for an article I'm writing, a grammar article about 2 different verbs. And I was looking at this verb, and what was amazing was that one dictionary said it was a transitive verb, and the other dictionary said it was an intransitive verb. And I'm like,
which is that's the exact opposite.
And so I, okay, now I got down to phrasal verbs and how that works. And but anyway, it's like you have to check. So if you've got what Doc says, if you have 4 or 5 different resources for information about whatever it is you're searching for, and 3 of them say it's this way, and then 2 of them say it's that way, then part of what you're doing when you're creating new original content is to do a deep dive into which to differentiate, because even though the number, there's 3 over here that say this and there's only 2 over here that say that, but it actually turns out that the 2 over here are the ones that are correct. That's the kind of thing that you need to check when you're creating your content, because there's just so much misinformation out there on the web.
But that's your value add. That's what you've added that nobody else did. And I think that's one of the keys to ranking now, is if we're all writing about the same topics, right? Mm-hmm. How can they really differentiate? Mm-hmm. There's got to be more to it than just links too, in my opinion, from what I've seen. Yeah, it's not just links anymore. There's a lot more on-page stuff that's, and to your guys who seem to think you have to repeat something 7 times, ask them, do you mean the synonym?
No, they don't. That's the problem. That's part of the problem.
And that's the problem. You know what you do then? You explain BERT to them and all natural language processing and tell them they should move out of the, into the 21st century. The 20th century has passed.
It's got nothing to do with livers and voodoo? Chicken livers and voodoo?
I mean, that's the key to even ranking now, is not the keyword, but having the associated keywords as well.
Right. So what it boils down to, Terry, is, at least in my view, is, oh my gosh, you have to think about this before you write about it. And so
it's going to put an awful lot of copyright.
Well, that's always been a good idea, but seldom followed. I don't think that's changed.
No
I think it's just followed more now if you want to be successful.
Yeah.
Hey, there's some value to that stuff. There's a lot of stuff that gets published on the web that has no thought, or it has slimy thought. It's like when the guy starts writing about optimizing pages for BERT, and he tells you, and I had this gut instinct about machine learning and how it gets applied to pages. Machine learning doesn't get applied to the pages; it gets applied to the queries. You dumbass.
And I'm not real sure that gut instinct is going to come in later.
It's technical.
You got instincts based on spoiled meat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, because so one of the things is, you know, when you're trying to find information about something, is that because there's this huge body of information out there, and a lot of it is misinformation, you have to have some kind of guideline for discernment about what you're going to use and where you are going to go as the content creator, where you are going to go to research what it is. Because those 4 or 5 articles that you look at that are the, you know, your base, as it were, your starting point, you still have to go dig deep. At least that's my feeling. What do you think, Doc?
Yeah, you know, increasingly so. I don't think that it depends a little bit on the depth of the topic you're covering, obviously.
Yeah, right.
I think that I always find I need to look at topic, and like what Terry's saying, if 177 people have already written about this, if my client really needs content on that, okay, fine, we'll do the best we can. But I'll tell them right up front, you know, don't expect a whole lot of activity to be generated by this, because you're one of a football field full of people talking.
You're one of 178 now. Yeah, right.
And you've got nothing unique to offer. You don't have the best price, the best location, the best reputation. You have nothing other than a carbon copy of the same product description or how-to article or whatever. So why would you go do a video on how to upload a post to WordPress? There's got to be hundreds of those available on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are even in intelligible English. Okay, so you know, at that point, I think it just doesn't warrant any deep research. But once in a while, there will be something that especially if you have some knowledge of the topic, that you'll see. You know what? These guys don't even look at X, and now you can add some deep research and really bring some additional value to it. And you know, those are the pearls in the oyster that you find once in a while, where there's a real opportunity to take a hackneyed topic and bring real value to it.
Right.
And I've found, you know, on rare occasions that happens, that the search engines will recognize it. And I just have to, you know, my gut instinct, okay, tells me that they're focusing on the additional information that's there. You know, that they may just be ignoring this oft repeated stuff, but now they're focusing on the fact that I've added some value to it. You know, those opportunities don't come off. You know, they don't come up around every day, but once in a while. I hate dealing with old hackneyed topics, because it's just, I find myself, you know, if it's something relatively new, I can get enthused about it and I'll knock it out in an hour and I'll come up with something I'm really happy with. And if it's something that's been beat up for the last 12 years, I'll spend 4 hours and still think it sucks. And 9 times out of 10, I'm right, it sucks. Because there was just nothing to bring to the table with it.
Nothing new to bring.
Or the page that's been ranking for 12 years, and no one's going to ever knock it off.
Exactly. You're never going to kick them off the top spot. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I've seen search like that where you look at it and say, okay, I wonder how long this page is being number 1 with a bullet. Like,
yeah, and sometimes they're just awful, atrocious stuff. And yet they've been in number 1 for the last 4 years. You know, just go figure. That, you know, the first thing I suspect when I see something like that is, okay, nobody's covering this topic. And then you read the article and you say, no, I'm wrong. Everybody's been covering this topic. But this guy's been doing it since Christ's 2nd birthday.
Nobody's written crap like this before.
He was
Yeah.
the first.
With
The first
with
colonist,
emphasis
supposedly.
on the crap. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Uh-huh.
Well, I think another way to approach something that, when your client says we want you to write about this thing that's been written about, 177 times.
Yeah.
Is that, I think, is where Answer the Public can really help you focus on creating answers within your content that directly answer questions that come up in Answer the Public, so that if somebody is searching for how to and the page that's ranking mentions it but doesn't go into specifics, but if your article says this is how you do A, and you have steps, then you have specifics that aren't covered in the ranking page, and then you're responding directly to the queries.
Right. So I was asked to write an article about the biggest SEO myths on the web. And I said, okay, I could just write about the biggest SEO myths, or I could write about identifying the lack of critical thinking and how to develop critical thinking.
Which is actually a better post.
The teach a man to fish and he gets fed for one day. Teach him how to fish, and he goes home, isn't hungry the rest of his life.
Yeah.
The first thing you got to do is you grab the fish and you slap him upside the head with it.
Oh my God. Critical thinking, define your terms. So
This is an industry that basically grew out of non-critical thinking into critical thinking. Like in the beginning, there's not much to think about because nothing had ever been done. Really, when you think about it, it's like a clean slate.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So we
They
developed
explain it more.
clickbait before we ever developed reasons to click.
Yeah.
Right. We actually just had placeholders and not places to click.
Placeholders. Okay.
Well, that's like, back those days, we didn't look at conversions, we looked at hits.
Page visits.
Hits was everything,
Hits. Yes, I remember hits.
And people selling advertisements get pissed off because you wanted to measure conversions. So, man, you're messing with my AdWords. You're using AdWords? You're selling things for that price and you're using AdWords? Why? Why are you giving Google all the money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're at the top of the hour to go find some more answers to questions.
And don't forget Deep SEO Con.
What is Deep SEO Con?
No, I gave a shameless plug last week. I'm not going to take
Okay.
advantage of you again.
Well,
Bill.
I'm to the point where I can actually drive there now.
Yeah, you can't over promote that.
You're always welcome down here, Bill. We don't have to have a conference, but this one's virtual, so you can.
Okay,
you
I've got a passport too.
Yeah, and a driver's license any day now.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I just need to spend more time on Duolingo.
Well, you don't need to be bilingual to enjoy street tacos, man.
No?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Have a good day.
Bye all.